journey of Specialist Miller. Sometimes life does not go the exact way it is planned and may take many different turns and twists into different directions. Everyone has a mission in life, the end result to one's journey. Specialist Randolph Miller went through his own personal journey, serving in the U.S. Army post-Vietnam in the 3rd Infantry Division in Schaffensburg, Germany. Born in Lebanon, Pennsylvania, to Walter and Ardella Miller, he has 2 older brothers, Richard and Robert Miller. Richard went into the Navy for 13 years after high school, and Robert went into the Army, serving 1 term. Specialist Miller's family was certainly not thrilled he was drafted, nor was his wife Barbara Miller, because they were just married. Specialist Miller graduated from Elko High School in 1970, and then went on to drive a delivery truck for his local bakery. He was then drafted and received a lottery number of 76. That year, it was predicted that they would draft up to number 75 due to Vietnam winding down. But Hurricane Agnes hit Pennsylvania and ended up changing the course of the draft.
And there was a storm that changed history a little bit, and because of that storm, I ended up in the service.
Hurricane Agnes was a detrimental storm that caused severe damage on the eastern coast. The smaller lottery numbers were scheduled to go first for their physicals. Due to the Agnes storm hitting and affecting New Cumberland where they had their physicals, they were canceled and rescheduled. Therefore, Specialist Miller had his physical before others, like one of his friends whose number is 55 and didn't get drafted. Specialist Miller left for full-time service on October 24th, 1972, serving until October 18th of 1974. He had a 6-year commitment, 2 years of active duty, and 4 years of inactive duty, which consisted of going to 1 summer camp. He left for basic training in Fort Dix as his initial point of entry.
So what I had to do was report to New Cumberland, which is up in the Harrisburg area, and we boarded a bus, and they took us to Fort Dix.
At Fort Dix, his head was shaved, he received many shots, and they took him and others to a warehouse for uniforms, sleeping bags, etc. Next, basic training was quite the unique experience for Specialist Miller. He had to get up very early and fall out for formation. Then they would head to breakfast and exercise and train later.
They were very much into physical training and getting you in good shape, so they did a lot of that. We did a lot of running and push-ups and sit-ups and that type of thing.
In training, Specialist Miller went to the firing ranges frequently, which was far from his barracks. He and others had to walk through sand. It was extremely hardcore when training. If he would not stay in line, they were forced to do push-ups and repeat whatever it was that they were doing.
They were very into making us do exactly what they wanted us to do. There was only one way, and it was their way.
There were many ups and downs to training in Miller's case. The best part was when he was able to get visits from his wife on the weekends, who was also expecting their child, as well as he enjoyed firing the M16 and qualified on that. On the other hand, the worst part of training for Specialist Miller was gas masks.
And at one point we had to put on a gas mask and go into the gas chamber and walk around in there, and then we had to take our gas mask off, and we had to talk to our drill sergeants. We had to tell them who we were and what company we were with, and what rank we were and what our address was, and things like that. And then after we said all that, then we were allowed to leave. So at that point then, we had the side effects of the gas, and that's what they wanted us to have that experience. So.
And after basic training, Specialist Miller went on to advanced infantry training in Fort Polk, Louisiana, to learn how to fire mortars. There wasn't a lot to remember for Specialist Miller at Fort Polk. He did not like the base and was away from home, so it was quite challenging. He also received specialized training on the M81 mortar, which they had to qualify on.
We would have to set the grid and the distance on the mortar and then hit the target.
When in infantry training, Specialist Miller qualified on the M16 rifle and the M81 mortar. Then in basic, he qualified on grenade throwing and machine gun. There was a lot of effort and hard work that went into training for Miller, especially because he was away from his family and had to work very hard physically.
That was very challenging, but it was rewarding, so it did put you in good shape. shape and helped you out there.
Following infantry training, Miller went to Schaffensburg, Germany, where he was in the 7th Infantry Unit. This is where he was for his primary job, working with mortars. If there was a war, they would call this unit.
So our main priority was to constantly be training and be ready in case we were called to go to war at any location or to a conflict. So we would train, physical training again, training with the M16, training on the mortar, and just being continually prepared for that.
Now Specialist Miller had a secondary job, which was a driver for his company commander Palmer. He volunteered and drove Palmer's Jeep. After that, they needed any supply drivers, so then he volunteered for that job.
And then I had to drive what they call the deuce and a half truck. It was a 2.5 ton truck, and I would use that to go for supplies for our company. And the supply captain and myself would go out to the field whenever we were going to have training, and we would set up camp before the soldiers would get there.
Throughout Specialist Miller's journey, he received many different promotions, including an E2 promotion in Basic and promoted to PFC, then Specialist 4 while he was in Germany.
I was promoted to Specialist 4, and that actually was about as high as I could go with promotions in the 2-year period I was there. They did entice me to re-enlist, and with the re-enlistment I would have been promoted to sergeant.
Throughout his service, Miller got to meet a lot of new people, including some that he still stays in contact to with this very day. He built friendships and connections which kept him well balanced. The military lifestyle for Specialist Miller meant seeing his family, staying in contact, and working hard every day.
Well, after my son was born, and he was 6 weeks old, my wife and my oldest son flew over to Germany to live with me. I got permission from my company commander to move off base and have my family there. And we rented an apartment on the German economy, and we lived just a few blocks away from the barracks, and I could actually walk to work. So
Now, Miller did have quite the good experience while he was in Germany. He traveled all around and was welcomed by the Germans.
We traveled, if we would have a long weekend or something like that, we would travel to different parts of Germany. I know we were in Munich, where the Olympics were at one point. Black Forest is well known in Germany. And we traveled to different towns and communities in Germany.
When it was time for Specialist Miller's service to come to an end, he had what was called a short-timer's calendar, where one checks off each day before they get out of service.
So one thing that military guys have, they call it a short-timer's calendar, and they create a calendar probably the last year. Some guys do, some do 6 months, some do 3 months, and they check off the days when they're getting close to being able to get out of the military. Of course, I had a short-timer's calendar as well, so I remember checking off those days and getting close to the time where I could go home and
Following, when Specialist Miller got home, his family was very excited and accepting. He went back to his civilian life, working at the same bakery as he did before joining the service, though there were some challenges with the community because of Vietnam. The community was not in favor, nor were they accepting of the war and those who were serving at the time. Medals and pins are one of the many representations of the achievements of one's service. Specialist Miller qualified as a sharpshooter and was very proud to do so. He qualified on grenades after going through training and multiple tests. Then in advanced infantry training, he qualified on the mortar. And lastly, he received the National Defense Medal, which Miller received because he was stationed out of. Overall, Specialist Miller went through a strenuous journey to be able to reach his destination, including fighting odds against the Agnes storm when drafted, leaving behind his family, and going through extremely difficult conditions to train and serve his country. Miller had quite the military journey that greatly impacted his life and him as a person. Thank you, Specialist Miller, for all your hard work and dedication in protecting our country. I am honored to call you my grandfather, and I greatly appreciate every sacrifice you have made while serving.